The story begins in the bustling streets of Umuku, a small but lively Nigerian town. The sun beat down on the dusty roads as people bustled about their daily business. At the heart of the town stood a modest barber shop owned by Obinna, a well-known barber. Obinna wasn't just a barber, he was a magician with clippers. People said he could make even the most unkempt hair look like it belonged to royalty. The shop was always packed. Young men, elders, and even women trooped in daily to get their hair cut or styled. His fame grew, and so did his wealth. Yet, behind the charm of his craft lay a dark secret. Obinna had a lucrative side business. He sold the hair collected from his clients to unknown buyers. He justified his actions with the belief that waste is wealth. One evening, as Obinna swept the floor of his shop after a busy day, he glanced at the black plastic bag filled with hair. "Another good harvest," he muttered, tying the bag tightly. A knock on the shop door startled him. It was a tall, slender man dressed in a sleek black suit. His eyes gleamed unnaturally in the dim light. "I hear you're the best barber in town," the man said, his voice smooth but eerily cold. "Do you sell hair?" Obinna froze. He had never been directly confronted about his secret dealings. "Who's asking?" he replied cautiously. The man smiled, revealing perfectly white teeth. "Let's just say I'm a businessman. I want to buy all your hair from now on, at a price you can't refuse." The man introduced himself as Mr. Kolu and placed a suitcase on the barber counter. When Obinna opened it, his breath caught. It was filled with crisp naira notes, far more than he had ever earned from his hair dealings. "This is an advance," Mr. Kolu said. "From now on, every strand of hair you collect must come to me. No questions asked." Obinna hesitated. This was beyond anything he'd imagined. "What do you need the hair for?" he asked. Mr. Kolu's smile faded. "It's not your concern. All you need to know is that you'll be very rich." Greed clouded Obinna's judgment. He shook Mr. Kolu's hand, sealing the deal. From that day on, every strand of hair in his shop went directly to Mr. Kolu. Business flourished, and Obinna upgraded his shop, bought a new car, and became one of the wealthiest men in Umuku. But with his newfound wealth came whispers. People began to notice strange things happening. Clients who had once been healthy started falling ill. Fever, unexplained weakness, and in some cases, hallucinations plagued them. Some died mysteriously within weeks of visiting Obinna's shop. At first, Obinna brushed off the rumors. Coincidence, he told himself. But deep down, unease crept into his heart. Something wasn't right. One fateful evening, a young boy named Emeka visited Obinna's shop with his father. The boy was full of life, laughing and chatting with the barber as his hair was cut. Obinna swept the boy's hair into the usual collection bag, never thinking twice. Days later, Obinna had devastating news. Emeka had fallen ill and was bedridden. His father, desperate for answers, claimed the sickness began after the boy's haircut. Panic spread through the town. Some accused Obinna of witchcraft, while others demanded answers. Obinna began to question his arrangement with Mr. Kolu. He decided to confront the man and demand the truth. That night, he called the number Mr. Kolu had given him. The line rang, but no one answered. Frustrated, Obinna drove to the address Mr. Kolu had once mentioned, only to find an abandoned building. It was as if Mr. Kolu had vanished into thin air. The next day, another tragedy struck. An elderly man who had visited the shop died suddenly. Fear consumed Obinna. He knew he had to find Mr. Kolu and put an end to the deal, but the strange man was nowhere to be found. By now, the police were involved. Reports of illnesses and deaths linked to Obinna's shop had reached the authorities. One morning, 2 officers entered the barber shop and asked Obinna to accompany them to the station for questioning. At the station, Obinna was interrogated about his dealings. The officers pressed him about the unusual sicknesses and deaths. Trembling, Obinna confessed to selling hair to Mr. Kolu but left out the part about the money ritual. He claimed he didn't know what the hair was being used for. The officers were skeptical. "Where is this Mr. Kolu?" one of them asked. "I don't know. He disappeared," Obinna replied. The investigation intensified. Meanwhile, the townspeople grew restless. They demanded justice for their loved ones. Obinna's once thriving business was now a ghost town. His wealth became meaningless as he faced public scorn and mounting fear. One night, Obinna woke to loud knocks on his door. A group of villagers stood outside, holding torches. "We know what you've done," they shouted. Obinna barely escaped, fleeing into the darkness. Desperate and alone, Obinna knew he had to find Mr. Kolu. But how do you track a man who seems to be a ghost? As Obinna searched for answers, he realized that his greed had unleashed a curse that could only be undone at a terrible cost. Obinna fled to his cousin's home in a neighboring town, hoping to escape the villagers' wrath. But peace eluded him. Every night, he dreamed of the faces of his clients, pale, lifeless, and accusing. In these dreams, he saw Mr. Kolu, standing over a blazing fire, chanting in a language Obinna could not understand. Determined to uncover the truth, Obinna sought help from a local herbalist named Dibia Okoro. Known for his wisdom and ability to commune with the spirits, Dibia Okoro was the only person Obinna trusted with his secret. After hearing Obinna's story, Dibia Okoro lit a small fire and threw in powdered herbs. Thick smoke filled the room as the herbalist chanted. Moments later, his eyes rolled back, and his voice changed, deeper and more haunting. "You have made a grave mistake. The man you call Mr. Kolu is not of this world. He is a servant of the spirits who feast on human essence. The hair you sold him has been used to bind the souls of your clients. Their suffering fuels his wealth, and your hands are stained with their blood." Obinna fell to his knees, trembling. "What can I do to stop this?" he asked. Dibia Okoro's voice softened. "To break the curse, you must find the man and destroy his altar. But beware, he will not give up his power easily." With Dibia Okoro's guidance, Obinna began his search for Mr. Kolu. The herbalist provided him with a protective charm and instructed him to follow his instincts. "The spirits will lead you to him," Dibia said. Obinna returned to Umuku, where rumors of his guilt had intensified. Disguising himself, he visited an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the same place Mr. Kolu had once mentioned in passing. Inside, he found a chilling sight, a makeshift altar surrounded by candles, animal skulls, and strands of human hair. Before Obinna could act, Mr. Kolu emerged from the shadows, his presence as menacing as ever. "I knew you would come," he said, his voice calm but threatening. Obinna demanded answers, his fear replaced by anger. "Why are you doing this? Why are you killing my clients?" Mr. Kolu laughed coldly. "You were blinded by greed, just like the others before you. Their hair is a conduit for power. Each strand represents a life, and with every sacrifice, my wealth grows." Desperate, Obinna tried to destroy the altar, but Mr. Kolu raised his hand, and an invisible force pinned him against the wall. "You cannot fight me. You belong to me now," Kolu said, his eyes glowing unnaturally. Obinna struggled against the force, clutching the protective charm Dibia Okoro had given him. Summoning his courage, he recited the incantation the herbalist had taught him. The room trembled, and Mr. Kolu's grip weakened. Enraged, Kolu lunged at Obinna, but the charm glowed brightly, repelling him. Obinna seized the moment and smashed the altar with a metal rod. The candles flickered, and a deafening roar filled the air as the room plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, Mr. Kolu was gone, and the altar lay in ruins. Exhausted but relieved, Obinna collapsed to the floor. He returned to Dibia Okoro, who confirmed that the ritual had been broken. "The spirits have been appeased, but their forgiveness comes at a price. You must atone for your greed by dedicating your life to helping others. Only then will you find peace." The news of Obinna's ordeal spread quickly. While some villagers forgave him, others could not forget the lives lost. Obinna closed his barber shop and used his remaining wealth to open a clinic and community center in Umuku. He became a man of humility, dedicating his life to educating others about the dangers of greed and the unseen forces that lurk in the shadows. Though haunted by his past, he found solace in knowing he was making amends. One day, while walking through the marketplace, Obinna saw a young boy who reminded him of Emeka. The boy waved and smiled, a gesture that filled Obinna with hope. As he turned to leave, he felt a chill run down his spine. Across the street stood a man in a black suit, his eyes gleaming unnaturally. Obinna blinked, and the man was gone. The memory of Mr. Kolu lingered, a reminder that some forces could never be fully defeated. But Obinna had learned a valuable lesson: wealth earned at the expense of others always comes at a price.